G'day, I'm Paul. So I've got to admit, sometimes I'll hop into a car and drive it around a bit before I actually sit down and have a look at the notes and pricing and all that sort of stuff. And I was a bit surprised when I saw how much that costs. It is the Haval Jolion, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but a lot of you have been asking us to review it, so that's what we're doing today. This one right here is the top specification Ultra version. It's priced at just over $30,000 drive away. The reason that surprised me is because the interior looks pretty good, the exterior looks nice. Now, if that's a little bit too expensive, the entry level is priced at just over $25,000 drive away. This competes with things like the Hyundai Kona, the Honda HR-V and the Kia Seltos. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use the time codes up on the screen there, or if you're on YouTube, scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so I can listen to more of your ideas and you can find out every single time we publish a review you've been asking for. Let's talk styling. So you've got 6 external colours to pick from. All but white is an additional $495. What do you reckon about the design? Let me know in the comments section. I think it's pretty striking. It doesn't look generic and I don't know, I don't want this to sound offensive, but it doesn't really look like a Chinese car. It looks like a mainstream European or Japanese vehicle. So you've got this sort of brushed chrome look up the front there, the Haval badge. You have a camera there for the 360 camera. You have a number plate that's on a little bit wonky, black garnish down the bottom. And then you've got these headlights, full LED headlights with LED daytime running lights. These actually give you a decent amount of vision at nighttime. It's a good setup. LED vision on the side there, just in case you've forgotten. Over on the side here, you have a set of 18-inch alloy wheels. So it's got that sort of shadow chrome look on the outside with piano black on the inside. Decent looking alloy wheel and good profile on the rubber as well, which means this should ride nicely when we go out for a drive later on. You've got an indicator built into that wing mirror with a camera for the 360 camera. You've got chrome strips along the side of the car and down the bottom as well. Roof rails, privacy glass here on the top spec. And then come around to the back. Around the rear you have more LED, and another reminder that it is LED. Haval, big letters across the rear there. Jolion over to the side, and GWM, which stands for Great Wall Motors. So yeah, keen to get your feedback. Let me know what you think about the design. Is it a good looking car, and would you buy one? Okay, we are inside the Jolion. Let's start off with the key. Here it is. So you have the panic button, lock, boot, unlock, and then on the back you have Haval. It's a proximity sensing key, so you just leave that in your pocket. Once you're inside, you've got a stop start button down here. Tell you what, I was pretty surprised when I first sat in this. 30 grand, you get a pretty schmick looking interior. You get this giant infotainment screen, this nice sort of material finish along the top there with what looks like real stitching. It really does feel like a premium offering, and it certainly feels a whole lot more premium than the rest of the cars in this segment. So a big tick there, and I think it's nicely presented as well with minimal use of piano black, thank goodness. In terms of the materials, they're sort of rubberized along the top there. You've got that soft stuff that I just mentioned. Then they get a little firmer and scratchier as you move down the cabin, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. In terms of your touch points, not too bad in the center there. Really nice and soft on the door. How soft are they? Well, we've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Now, what about build quality? This stuff's sort of fairly loose in the center there, but the rest of it feels okay. Have you owned a Haval before, a GWM of some sort? Let me know if it has been reliable and built properly in the comment section below. Let's talk infotainment. I guess this is the centerpiece of the interior. It is a whopper 12.3-inch infotainment system. Actually looks pretty decent as well. It looks like a high resolution screen. So big tick there. In terms of radio, you have AM and FM radio. There's no digital, which I find strange. A lot of the time we review these Chinese cars and they don't have any digital radio, so it is really odd that they don't fit that as standard. But you do have smartphone mirroring in the form of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I'll show you what Android Auto looks like. Both of those require a cable, by the way. Look at that. It is a full screen integration, and it is nice and sharp, very quick as well. So quite an impressive setup there. And this is what Apple CarPlay looks like. Look at that, another full screen integration. That's all nice and quick as well. This is a really impressive setup. I haven't seen any other cars that have, such an impressive visual presence inside the cabin, especially when it comes to smartphone mirroring. So I like that they've gone to that little bit of extra effort to I don't know, make this feel like a tech-savvy car. Oh, and by the way, there's a 6-speaker sound system. How good is it? It's so-so. It's not the world's best sound system, and it's not the worst. It kind of just does what it says on the box, so keep that in mind if you are buying it. Now, moving on to the screen ahead of the driver, you have a digital instrument cluster there as well, so no analog gauges. It's a nice looking setup. It can be a little bit confusing because there's a fair bit going on there, but you can transition between the screens and go to different sort of displays in the center there. And that also shows you your safety systems as well. There is a lot of them. They beep a lot at you as well. So thankfully you can change a lot of those settings here to remove some of the beeps that are constantly hounding you. But yeah, it can be a little overwhelming at times. Moving on to safety, you have autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You have an auto dimming rear vision mirror. You have a lane departure warning and a lane keeping assistant. You have radar cruise control. You also have a blind spot monitor built into the wing mirror just there. This thing over here, it's a driver attention alert. So it'll be able to detect if you're feeling drowsy or you're not concentrating, and it'll give you a warning. So pretty clever setup just there. Now, in terms of parking, you have front and rear parking sensors and a 360 camera. I'll show you what that looks like. It's a pretty cool setup. So decent resolution on that. I can clearly make out what's going on around the car. You have a top-down view. What you can also do is go straight to that view if you need to, but you can also select different angles. So you get kind of a 3D view of the car there. Pretty impressive in this price bracket, if you ask me. So practicality, and we'll start with connectivity. Down here, you've got 2 USB ports. You've got a 12-volt outlet. You have a wireless phone charger, so you can just whack your phone onto there. Or alternatively, your phone can sit in a number of other places. There's all these sort of random little storage nooks for things and pens and stuff. You've got 2 cup holders under here. Let's have a look at how it goes with our coffee cup. Look at that. There's actually a specific design for our tiny little coffee cup just there, so that's pretty impressive. And then you have a bigger one off to the side with rubber teeth. That means you can fit your water bottle into the bigger one without any dramas. Your bottle also fits inside the door. Let's see if we can fit our large water bottle as well. There you go, that fits too, so pretty decent amount of storage. Then you have a deep center console. You have a glove box there that's reasonably sized. More storage down the bottom here. And finally, a sunglasses holder. Okay, what about comfort? You'll notice here there's no sort of climate controls. You have to do them all on the screen, which is okay, but it can be a little bit annoying because, accessing it, you've got to find this spot, then you come to this screen, and then you're going to go up and down and do all that sort of stuff. A little bit clumsy while you're driving, so not the best layout in the world, but this is where you'll find your dual zone automatic climate control. Now, heated seats. There are heated seats for the front row as well, but as far as I can tell, the only way to activate them is to go through the menus to seating and then switching it on through there. There's no sort of shortcut buttons anywhere else, and it's not in the climate menu either. So very strange setup if you ask me. Now, what about the seats themselves? The design is interesting because you've got Haval imprinted on them. They've got this cool sort of cutout section. They are quite comfortable, so they hug you in nicely. They have electric adjustment, so you can go forwards and backwards. The back can go forwards and backwards, and then you can also lift the base of the seat. I do find though that I can't really find a comfortable position. I'd love to be able to lift the front of the base, but that doesn't work. And the same follows through the steering wheel, where you only have tilt adjustment. There's no reach adjustment, which I think is absolutely crazy because the steering wheel sits quite a way away from you. What about our reach test? All of that is pretty straightforward to reach while you're driving. Second row of the Jolion, I've got loads of room here. Like, I've got my seat pretty far back and stacks of knee room. Lots of toe room, and headroom is pretty good as well. Got a nice looking panoramic sunroof there, which looks fantastic. You've got a center armrest here with 2 cup holders. I'll show you how that works. So you've got gripped tabs on there. I'll whack that out of the way. And then you can also put your bottle inside the door as well, should you please. You've got map pockets in the back of the seats, 2 USB outlets. You've got air vents and also a storage nook down the bottom. You also have ISOFIX points on the 2 outboard seats. Pretty nice place to be seated back here, and a lot of room, which is pretty surprising. What about your cargo space? Let's have a look. You have a little over 400 litres of cargo space available just here in standard form. Beneath the cargo floor, you have a space saver spare tyre, and then you have storage off to the sides. Can expand the space, so I'll show you how that works in a moment. Bag goes in without any dramas. Yeah, it kind of fits in. Yeah, that'll fit in long ways, or you can just turn it if you want to. It's not a problem. I'll show you how to expand it. So we'll get rid of our cargo blind first. Lift that out of the way. Okay. So what you can do is drop the second row from here. Then when you do that, the space expands to a little over 1,100 litres. We've hit the road in the Jolion. So powering this is an interesting engine. So 1.5 litre, 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine. Makes 110 kilowatts of power and 220 newton meters of torque. Really not a great deal, but when you think about it, it actually doesn't weigh that much. It's around that 1,400 kilo mark. And that means that you don't need a huge giant engine under the bonnet there, sort of powering everything. And that's all mated to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Now, you know my feeling on dual clutches. Let's just see what it's like here when we come to a stop and go from a standing start. I'll just give this a little. Yeah, look, it's not amazing. So when you breathe on it, it slips a bit and then it gives you that sort of full force. It's not really smooth. Yeah, look, it's not the most amazing dual clutch in the world, but it's probably not going to drive you too mad. We do have a slight hill section that I'll get to a little later on, and we'll test it there in terms of reversing just to see what it's like, because that's normally where you can catch out these dual clutches in terms of the way that they work. How punchy is it? Well, let's give it a little stab here. Yeah, it's not very punchy at all. Yeah. Look, it's not going to win any performance awards, but I think it's okay for what it is. If you think of the demographic of this car, perhaps they're people that aren't too interested in cars, and I think if they want something more powerful, they'll probably go elsewhere. For the person that's buying this to drive in and around the city, it's probably going to fit the bill just fine. Now, what about fuel economy? So Haval claims 8.1 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle. We are currently averaging, let's have a quick look here, 9.3, so near enough to that figure. We've been doing a little bit of highway driving as well, so it is a little bit lower than what it's likely to be in the long term, especially if you are driving in and around the city. Now, I mentioned earlier, we've got a little hill section here for me to test this dual clutch gearbox. So what I'm going to do is point it down the hill. We're going to simulate reversing up a hill just to see how this goes. It's actually really good. They can be quite jerky when they do this if they're not calibrated properly. So yeah, pretty impressive there in terms of your low speed maneuvers. It will be a little jerky as you go off the line, but if you need to reverse up a hill or drive up a hill from stationary, it's not going to drive you bonkers. Haval doesn't have an official 0 to 100 time for the Jolion, but we've put it up against our stopwatch and this is how it went. Now, what about the ride? So we've got our choppy section coming up here. The ride is actually pretty impressive. I was expecting it to be far worse than it is. It is on the softer side, so what you'll find is that on those continuous undulations and the choppier parts, it can kind of dive down and bounce up again. But if you're driving this in and around the city, things like cobblestones, potholes, speed humps, it handles them really nicely. And it's surprising they've been able to engineer this so well. It feels like more of a premium SUV than just something they've cobbled together. Now let's talk handling. We'll switch over to manual mode. Got a couple of corners coming up. We'll tip it into here. Look, it's actually not terrible. It's not going to win any performance awards, but it kind of sits flat enough through corners. There's enough sort of confidence in the engine. It can get a little thrashy at that top end, but if you stay stuck into it, it kind of just does the job. It's surprising how much pace you can actually build up here. Everything is unsurprising as well, so it's never going to get to the point where mid-corner it's going to unsettle itself, and all of this is kind of pointless for an SUV. I think that if you were to find a mountain pass though, you have confidence in knowing that it can be nice and fun to drive, especially as a front-wheel drive car. What's visibility like? Well, look, out the front there, it's no dramas at all. Down the side, it's great. They're pretty big wing mirrors. You also have that blind spot monitor built into those as well. Visibility out the back though is really, really poor, and it's an incredibly narrow window. So when you look out the back, you can only just see through that parcel, and I think that really could be improved simply because it is quite tricky to see what's going on behind the car. I'm also not a fan of some of these, what I presume are Chinese characters coming up. If you're going to localise the car for the Australian market, go to the effort of removing that stuff because it can be a little bit confusing. You only know it's a stop sign because the stop sign's in front of you. But if it pops up and you don't know Mandarin, how are you actually meant to know what that is telling you? You're unlikely to be doing it, but just in case you do, you've got 1,500 kilograms of braked towing capacity. Now, what about road noise? It's not terrible. If you are on a country road with coarse chip surface like this one here, you do get a bit of tyre noise coming into the cabin, but for the most part, it is incredibly windy outside at the moment. We're not getting a huge amount of wind noise, and it's quiet enough in here. It's not going to send you deaf if you go for a long distance drive. One thing that I am sort of noticing here that's a bit of a recurring thing is this steering wheel. It's just too far in for me. I feel uncomfortable in this seating position. I'd really like to bring it out a little bit more. So it is a shame that there is no reach adjustment on the steering. So the Haval Jolion, what do we reckon? I'll tell you what, it surprised me. I didn't think it would be as nice as it is to drive. So the engine lacks a little bit of punch, but the ride around town is great. There's plenty of features inside the cabin. There is heaps of room inside the cabin, and the price is incredibly sharp. So look, don't expect a performance car because it definitely isn't that, but it is fairly efficient and punchy enough when you need it to be. There are some caveats though. There is no crash test just yet, and that concerns me a little bit. I generally don't like recommending cars that we don't have a crash test rating for. So I wouldn't buy this until it has been crash tested and until we know that it is quite a safe car. So keep that in mind. Go test drive it, but hold off buying it until there is a crash test rating. Outside of that, it really does tick all the boxes. And I've got to be honest, the rest of the manufacturers need to be concerned, because if they can produce a car like that for $30,000 drive away, I guess it shows you how much we're getting led down the garden path by some other manufacturers. So keep that in mind. Now, let me know what you think in the comments section below. Have you bought one of these? What's it been like? What's the service been like? Is it all good? I'm really keen to get feedback from owners. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you share it with your mates and hit the like button as well. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, take it easy.